Having made a previous video on the state parks of the Thousand Islands region that covers Lake Ontario, St. Lawrence River, and Lake Champlain, the next video in the collection is on the Finger Lakes region on the occasion of the centennial of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historical Preservation, the agency responsible for New York State parks and state historic sites, those founded in 1924. The Finger Lakes region does not cover all of the Finger Lakes because the easternmost lakes in Onondaga County are part of the central region of state parks, and the westernmost lakes are in the Genesee region. But most of the lakes, including the largest ones, Lake Seneca and Lake Cayuga, are located in this region. That also includes portions of the Allegheny Plateau and the shoreline of Lake Ontario. The first map of this state parks region, published in 1924, around the time of the agency's founding, includes a set of proposed roads and state parks for these lakes. Among the state parks that were proposed that did not become reality include Bluff Point, Red Jacket's birthplace, and what looks like Connecticut Hall. But others that did become a reality include Taughannock Falls, which at 215 feet is 50 feet higher than Niagara Falls. A destination also that became a very popular park, though not as famous as Niagara. The first state park that we'll mention in this video is Cayuga Lake State Park at 141 acres. It was developed in 1927, located on the west shore of Cayuga Lake, opposite the village of Cayuga on the other side of the lake, but close to the historic town of Seneca Falls. It includes a beach, camping, playground with a ship theme, and a rustic park lodge used for special events that overlooks the beach at Cayuga Lake State Park. To the south of that on Cayuga Lake is Dean's Cove State Boat Launch. At just 10 acres, all it has is a parking lot and a marina. Not even a marina, just a boat launch with a cove. But it's located on the site of the historic native village of Swayawana that was destroyed in the Sullivan Campaign of September 1779. Because most of the local natives were loyalist to the British cause, the Patriots attacked and devastated the Finger Lakes region, displacing most of the native villages and forcing most of them to flee to Canada. So on this site of a village, later Dean family settled here in the 1840s, and that's how it got the name Dean's Cove. But I can imagine this small state park being developed and given more attention to its native history, perhaps. Long Point State Park was developed in 1963. It's 297 acres located on the east shore of Cayuga Lake. Has a cabin rental on the water's edge, as well as a playground, picnic tables, hunting with permission, and fishing. Located on the east shore of Cayuga Lake. The other lakes within this region that appear on the map are Seneca Lake, Cayuga Lake, and Canandaigua Lake. The smallest lakes located to the south of Rochester are Conesus Lake, Hemlock Lake, Canadice Lake, and Honeyoke Lake. And to south of Syracuse are Owasco, Skaneateles, and Otisco. Should point out that Long Point is a common name on the map because there's also a Long Point State Park in the Thousand Islands and a Long Point State Park on Lake Chautauqua on the state's western edge. New York State also has two state parks named after Robert Moses, one in the Thousand Islands at the northernmost point of the state, and one in the Long Island region on the south shore of the state on Fire Island. New York also has two state parks named after John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, a founder of this country who lived in Westchester County. Taughannock Falls State Park is where Taughannock Creek carves out a gorge, and at the head of the gorge is Taughannock Falls. The deposit from this erosion created a delta on Cayuga Lake, where you could find the marina and the beach. This state park is 750 acres, developed in 1925. The first white settlers arrived here in 1794. In 1814, developed a paper mill here. Later after that, it became a steamboat stop and a railroad stop with an overlook at the waterfalls. Its name was either in honor of a fallen chief or perhaps a translation meaning the Great Falls in the Woods. As the resort community here declined in the early 20th century, state parks acquired the land and became a state park. Also includes a sledding hill that appears deep green on this map. But also within this park, you can see a private property enveloped by parkland. That is the Taughannock Falls Inn, a private hotel dating back to the 19th century. So you could sleep in the park, just like at Bear Mountain. And next to the hotel is the Goodwin Jones Pioneer Cemetery, where some of the early white settlers were buried. I mentioned that Taughannock Falls was accessible by railroad in the 19th century, and that was the Black Diamond Express that ran from New York to Buffalo. operating between 1896 and 1959, with a stop in the city of Ithaca and at Taughannock Falls. The last train ran here in 1961, and the railroad line was then abandoned for lack of customers and being unprofitable as cars became more popular. And from the 1970s, there were proposals to turn this railroad into a rail trail, a linear park stretching for 8.4 miles that opened to public in 2016 that connects to Alan H. Treman Marine State Park and the city of Ithaca to Taughannock Falls. Alan H. Treman State Marine Park is 93 acres, bordering on the northern edge of the city of Ithaca. Its namesake was Alan Hosey Treman, a Cornell University law professor, Ithaca City Council, and a member of the Finger Lakes Parks Commission, lived from 1899 to 1975. And the park borders on the city-owned Cass Park that has many more amenities, because all you could find here is just a parking, dog park, and a marina at the southern end of Cayuga Lake, where Cayuga Inlet flows into the lake. Robert H. Treman State Park. This is the father of Alan H. Treman. It was 1,110 acres acquired by state parks in 1920. Robert H. Treman was a financier, a Cornell University trustee, who purchased the land around Enfield Falls in 1915, working to improve the property. And later, with his wife Laura, donating this to New York State in 1920 for what became Enfield Glen State Park. After Robert H. Treman died in 1937, the park was named after him. It includes camping, cabins, trails, swimming under the waterfalls in Robert H. Treman State Park, bordering on the city of Ithaca, known as the City of Gorges, because there's so many small pocket canyons within the city and around it with waterfalls. Fillmore Glen State Park is another example, located next to the village of Moravia. Inside is a replica of the log cabin where Millard Fillmore was born, our 13th president, the last president of the United States who was neither a Democrat nor a Republican, representing the defunct Whig Party. Other presidents born in the state include Martin Van Buren, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Donald J. Trump. Presidents Grover Cleveland and Chester Arthur also lived in New York before becoming president, but they were not born here. This park is largely the result of Charles Atwood, local physician and pharmacist who lived in Ithaca, and advocated for the preservation of this gorge where Fillmore was born and the waterfall. So this is Fillmore Glen State Park, 941 acres. Buttermilk Falls State Park got its name because it resembled the sound of buttermilk being churned, or perhaps the color of the waterfall, acquired by Robert and Laura Treman in 1924 and then donated to the state of New York at 811 acres, and it's expanded much since then. This is Buttermilk Falls State Park. It also has a swimming hole under the waterfalls and appears in two books, The Waterfalls of New York State and New York State Waterfalls. So a lot of books written about the many waterfalls across the 62 counties of this state. Two Rivers State Park Recreation Area, 573 acres, acquired by the state only in 2005, so it's a post-millennial park. Undeveloped park, used mostly for hiking along the misnamed Dry Brook and the Upper Waverly Reservoir, which is upstream from the Lower Waverly Reservoir and the Waverly Glen Village Park. The town of Waverly is located on the border of Pennsylvania, and its neighbor is the town of Sayre, Pennsylvania, where the Chemung River flows into the Susquehanna River that gave the state park its name, Two Rivers. It is in the town of Waverly and Sayre, Pennsylvania, where New York State Route 17, also known as Interstate 86, briefly enters Pennsylvania, that makes it a true interstate highway, and then re-enters New York within a mile of entering Pennsylvania, which has only one exit. This is on Two Rivers State Park Recreation Area. Newtown Battlefield State Park at 372 acres. It was here that in the end of August 1779, Colonel John Sullivan and Colonel Peter Gansevoort led an expedition in this area against loyalist natives. On the centennial of this battle in 1879, a small parcel of land on what was known as Sullivan Hill was donated to create Newtown Battlefield Park. A 40-foot tall fieldstone obelisk was built on the summit of this hill, but the tower collapsed during a thunderstorm on August 30th, 1911. That same year, 15 acres of land, including the park, were deeded to the state of New York, becoming the Newtown Battlefield Reservation, a state reservation that became a state park. A new 80-foot tall granite obelisk was erected here in 1912. Further expansion then followed. During the Great Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was a job creation program, developed many of the picnic pavilions and the park pavilion within this park. Just like the U.S. Army, the CCC was segregated by race. And this was an all-black unit that developed Newtown Battlefield State Park. And here they protested against having a white commander, that if there would be a black unit, there should be a black commander for the honor of leading a battalion of builders, and so it was here at Newtown Battlefield State Park. State Park overlooks Chemung River, which from the 1840s to 1870s functioned as a canal connecting to the Erie Canal further downstream. With the popularity of railroads, the Chemung Canal was abandoned and restored back into a natural waterway here at Newtown Battlefield State Park. Inside State Park, there are historical signs that speak of the battle that took place here on the hilltop of Newtown Battlefield. There is a former state park in the Finger Lakes region, the former Pinnacle Golf Course State Park, that was acquired in the 1960s, but lacking enough customers and being in an isolated area, it was abandoned and was then decommissioned in 2017 and absorbed into McCarthy Hill State Forest that's managed by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The park's clubhouse was destroyed and the land was restored to its natural state at the former Pinnacle State Park, which is now part of McCarthy Hill State Forest. Soaring Eagles Golf Course is located on Mark Twain State Park. Why is there a state park named after the famous writer, formerly known as, officially known as Samuel Langhorne Clemens? It's because he had a house and a cottage nearby in the town of Elmira. This state park is not all golf. There's also a wetland trail there along the Catherine Creek wetland. It's known as a birding trail. Yes, birding, not bird watching. Don't call them bird watchers. They don't like that. So birding trail within Mark Twain State Park next to the golf course. This is 464 acres. Watkins Glen State Park. This is a destination park. Very much a place of visiting on a par with Niagara Falls and Jones Beach and Bear Mountain when it comes to amenities and the number of visitors. It is 778 acres acquired by the state in 1906. John Watkins acquired the property around this gorge in 1794 following a treaty that displaced the local natives, and he constructed mills along the Watkins Creek. His younger brother, Samuel Watkins, saw different potential in this site. Inheriting the property, he spent 4 decades building up the area with roads, shops, and a hotel that brought in visitors throughout the 19th century. And Watkins Glen very much drove the economy of the village of Watkins Glen that's located at the head of this very, very thin canyon carved out by the glaciers at the last ice age. Within the park are historical signs testifying to the mountain house. The mountain house here was a hotel, a resort called the Glen Mountain House that, even though it's no longer with us, within the park there is a swimming pool and cabins named after the local native nations. So you could sleep in the park, swim in the park, walk behind and around the waterfalls in Watkins Glen State Park, the regional tourism magnet. In 2018, the park received a new main entrance, a $6.5 million project, converted a decrepit parking lot facing the creek by moving the parking lot further out of the park across Franklin Street and creating a new seating area, performance space, and planting trees here along the water, where the creek exits the gorge and then within a mile flows into Cayuga Lake. This is at Watkins Glen State Park. Very beautiful seating area, postmodern landscaping. I should also point out that within the park there are other historical signs that point out to Morvalden Els, the developer of the park who purchased it from the Watkins family in 1863 as a private enterprise before it became a state park, describing as one of the scenic wonders of the world. During the 1930s, the Civilian Conservation Corps developed trails along the gorge and the waterfalls. So you could see in here, following what was called the flood of the century in 1935, when the park had to be rebuilt. Now, I could continue on to speak about Sampson State Park and Catherine Valley Park, which is a linear park, and many others, but I don't want this video to be too long. So for part 2 of Finger Lake State Park, you'll have to watch the next episode, which will include Catherine Valley Trail, Lodi Point, Bona Vista Golf Course, and the Sampson State Park, among many others. But for now, we will finish here with Watkins Glen and look forward to presenting part 2 of Finger Lakes. Thank you so much.